Good afternoon and welcome to the TCPalm Editorial Board meeting to interview candidates for St. Lucie County School District 2, St. Lucie County School Board District 2. I'm Larry Reisman, columnist and community editor, and I am joined by fellow editorial board members Adam Neal, our editor and news director, Gil Smart, our columnist, and then another member of our team who's not on the editorial board is Kelly Rogers, who will be directing the broadcast today. I'll be leading the questioning and opening it up to other editorial board members at the end. Thanks to our candidates, James Monds and Jack Kelly, for streamlining this process by completing questionnaires ahead of time. Board members have reviewed them. They can be found at tcpalm.com/elections, along with other stories, videos, and information about the November 3rd election. At the conclusion of this interview, editorial board members will discuss possibly writing an editorial to recommend a candidate in this race. We've got several questions for you today, and we might end up having more of a conversation than just a simple Q&A. Our goal is to be completed in 45 minutes. Because of our time constraints, we ask that you keep your answers concise. Just like when you're on the dais, you'll have to determine what that means and be respectful of others. We'll start the questioning with Jack. Can you please cite 3 metrics you would use to help determine whether the school district is meeting its mission each year?
Well, this year is quite different. It's unprecedented, so the metrics would be quite different. The number one, putting aside all the COVID problems and the safety and welfare, 3 things that would have to be done if we didn't have this right now would be the attention to growth. The growth of this county is phenomenal. You know what it was 15 years ago? Port St. Lucie was the fastest growing city in the United States, and we had to do unbelievable things to catch up with the school board. The second thing is we were going to do a review of the safety concerns in the police department and the entire police forces for the entire county and do a sensitivity or a different direction, which didn't happen because of all the things that have happened now. And the third most important thing is to keep the amount of teachers that we have and stop people from leaving, going and coming, because that's been a problem in the past. Not too bad in the last year or two, but those are the metrics. Also, you'd have to go by test scores, graduation rate, which has been really good lately, and I hope that stays the same. But when you asked me to come on this, my metrics were kind of all aimed at what's going on right now, which is a completely different world.
Thanks, Jack. James, can you please cite 3 metrics you will use to determine whether the school district is meeting its mission each year?
Yes, sir. One of the biggest metrics that we as educators have to use is looking at our school board in a holistic manner, making sure, and the first metric that I would use to see how many schools do we have that are within the threshold of what we call successful schools as far as meeting proficiency. So if we want to make sure that we have the schools that are D's and C's schools, are they progressing to become a C or B school? Is that A school continue to do the things that they need to do to remain an A school, but also utilizing different resources to expand the knowledge base of the students who are mastering those particular standards. So that would be one way to kind of look at the totality of what our school system looks like. The second metric would also be looking at the behavior policies within the school, because the behavior policies actually speak directly to our school resource officers. So when we're looking at the behavior policies, for example, right now, we know that 50% of the individuals that are being suspended or being expelled out of school are our high school students. So we want to make sure we look at that metric and see if we're mastering those gains or making the correct avenues to make sure that number kind of decreases. Because if students are being expelled or suspended from high school, then those students more or less they can graduate, but they're not graduating with an effective education to be able to go out and do great things in our community. And the last metric would just be the transparency to see how the money is spent. Are we utilizing the dollars to make sure that we're prepared for the next pandemic, to make sure that we're prepared for things that we can't kind of really prepare for? So those are my 3 things. It would definitely be looking at looking at our behavior policies, looking at our schools that are prospering, as well as the schools that are not doing quite as well, that are struggling. And our third thing will be looking at making sure that we have the means and the financial means to meet things such as a pandemic like this. And that speaks directly to hiring new teachers, expanding teachers' salaries and things like that, to make sure we keep them here and continue to have our best and brightest teachers in our communities. You're muted.
Okay, I'll get the hang of that once at some point. We'll start with you James on this one. With the added challenges of COVID-19, how can you make sure that the students of varying cultures, languages, or socioeconomic backgrounds all receive an education that helps them reach their potential?
So the biggest thing right now about COVID, the COVID-19 deal, is we have to be very transparent. Communication is the biggest thing. And me dealing with this on a regular basis, I'm currently right now dealing with it. The one thing that we have to be able to do is when we push out our communication, it has to be in different languages. So that way parents who are home helping their students who don't speak that English language, they can still understand what's happening. We also have to make sure that we have the ability to follow the guidelines, the CDC guidelines, which is really, really tough. And being in education as an administrator, it's tough to meet a lot of those guidelines because we don't have the finances that we may need in order to separate the kids, in order to dilute the amount of kids in the classrooms, in order to bring in new teachers, and as well as get substitute teachers prepared so that if a teacher does end up contracting this disease, we're able to have another teacher ready to go. So those are a lot of things that we're dealing with the COVID thing right now. I definitely think that we have to find new ways and more ways to bring in the financial pieces, to look at the CDC programs, bring in the health professionals to sit down and have conversations with us, and also let the parents at home know that we are trying our best to make sure that every child is taken care of, regardless of what the background is, regardless of where they come from. We have to also get into the communities of where these kids are and have conversations in those communities. Like one thing that I'm doing myself is I'm going around to the local youth programs and having conversation with those youth programs about how does COVID affect you, what we need to do to make sure our kids are safe, because these are the same kids that are leaving the football field, the baseball fields, and going back into the schools. So we have to have that conversation in a holistic manner with the community and everyone involved in that community to make the school board a better and a safer place.
Thanks, James. Jack?
Well, I watched the school board meeting last night. Wasn't able to go over there, but watching that meeting, I think all the systems that they've put in are pretty well working. My wife is a substitute teacher. She was supposed to work all this week, and she's going in next week. And she's an ESC teacher. My daughter's a teacher. Both of them over 20 years. So we're pretty well aware of what's going on. Everything seems to be working with the social distancing. Kids are wearing their masks. Teachers are. I think they've been very transparent. Mr. Gent reported last night on exactly what the numbers were for people that are sequestered and staying home, and constantly will keep everybody above board with that. One of the problems I found is, the Boys and Girls Club is near and dear to my heart. We work very close with the school board in every way. We have six locations right now that we're helping out with the parents who are essential workers. And these children that are at home, and I don't know if you know or not, but right now we have 45% brick and mortar, 45% children in the schools, actually in the schools, and 55% are on virtual. The virtual is pretty rough to control. If a parent is an essential worker and there's only one parent, they have to be in work. They can't be with that child, and we require somebody to be with them. So the Boys and Girls Club has put an alliance up with the help of the Children's Services Council, and I did it pretty quick, where we have children over at the Civic Center. I visited there yesterday, and they have 9 or 10 in each group, and they stay with a trained person who stays there for the entire time that they're being taught by a virtual teacher. The problem that we have, the biggest problem we're having, is with the older children. A lot of the older children are not going to school; they're being left home with their younger spouses. Some of the younger children, some of the kids are 5, 6, 7 years old, and they have no one. So you've got your 16, 17-year-old, 13-year-old children older staying with these kids during the day. We're trying to get that away so we can get these kids, all of them, into the virtual program, because you asked me, all of them, they all have to be educated. Everybody, no matter what zone you're in, what zip code you're in, they all have to be educated. And this is a big problem. So we're just trying to get the word out. I think we have about 200 children enrolled in that right now. We have room for about another 90. And if with more money, we can do even more. But that's one of the problems. But I think the transparency absolutely is there. Mr. Gent does a wonderful job with that.
Thanks, Jack. We'll start with you on the next question. Finances always seem to be a challenge. What would your strategy be before voting on reallocating funds to make ends meet?
Well, I happen to have the budget with me right here, and it's quite different than what we used to do in the city. A lot of people don't understand that the school board is not a taxing authority. They're told, and I know you all know that, they're told by the state what their taxes is. Of course, we have the 1%, 1 mil voted money that will last for the next 4 years. Right now, the expendable budget is about $520 million. That's the money that we're going to spend on the teachers' salaries, everything to run the schools. The total budget is 647, and I'm looking at the budget from a month ago. It's been increased from 642 to 647. That difference, that other money, the difference between the 520 and the 647 is for debt, mostly for debt and for rainy day funds, and that's what it's held for. When things are moved around and made differently, you have to move things around, and the board can do that. They move money around. They can't really increase anything or get funds from other words. You have to go by the facts. You have to go by what you're given by your staff. The staff will give you exactly what's happening. You have to go by all the facts. Mr. Monds mentioned all the stuff that he would look over every single time. And those things are reported constantly at all the board meetings, and you get everything from Mr. Gent and his staff on a constant basis. So naturally, you have to watch all of that constantly to see if the funds are in the right place that are working. My decision would be based on whatever the staff tells me and my own, how I can see everything. I've got a lot of experience in it. Staff is usually right most of the time, but they aren't always. You have to do things on your own. I've had 5 or 6 people that I used to contact when I was an elected official that are outside of the county, outside of my city, attorneys and other city managers, just to go in and ask them some of these plans that they have or things that they're going to do, if they work and if they've employed them before. So I would go outside and ask people about their recommendations and if these ideas and plans have worked before. Some things you just have to move because things happen and you got to put things into that budget. With COVID, it could change on a weekly, daily basis. We don't know if there's going to be a cure for the COVID. We don't know if we're going to have a second wave. We probably will, but that's going to change quite a bit on these expenditures. Yeah, you got to be careful. You got to go outside.
Thanks, Jack. James, finances always seem to be a challenge. What would your strategy be before voting on reallocating funds to make ends meet?
The first thing I would look for is what I do all the time. I mean, I'm looking at educational budgets as part of my daily job. And the first thing we look at is does this money make sense for the students? Are we going to get the best bang? When we say bang, meaning the best educational output for the financial input that we're receiving. And what we do is we look at that and we say, okay, looking at this budget, what are some of the things that we can expand, or what are some of the things that we must cut? One of the things that we'll never cut is curriculum. Now, we may change the curriculum, but we'll never cut curriculum. And in education, the biggest cuts, I hate to say it, but most of the cuts always come down to the teachers. And that's something that I would look at to make sure that that's not happening, because the teachers are the ones on the front line. And having the ability to be in this education for the last 13 years of my life and being in the administration of education for the last 6.5 years, I know how it hurts to look at a budget and know that certain things have to go. But I'm not a guy that's going to kind of cut teachers' salaries. I'm not going to cut the police department, because we need those individuals in our schools. So being that finances is very important, I would be that board member that would have that accountability, that can look at that particular that document and say, hey, listen, this is what we've done at other schools, or this is what they're doing at other schools. Well, maybe we should try that. So when we look at the finances, we have to look at finances in a way that they're going to help the teachers teach their job effectively and efficiently. And we have to look at the opportunity for us to utilize those dollars for our kids to be able to do what they need to do to be successful. And that doesn't mean cutting, after school programs. That doesn't mean cutting the arts programs. What that means is finding ways to make those programs work, but then looking at other means of maybe cutting things or making things shorter. So the way I look at it is we have to make sure we look at these dollars. And that's what I talk about when I'm talking about transparency, especially financial transparency. And when you have someone on the board that's been doing this all of his life, that's dedicated his life to making sure the kids are taken care of, he's going to look at that from a holistic standpoint and say what is best for the students, what is best for the teachers, and then we can deal with the top-down model at a later date. But right now, especially with the COVID thing, I mean, there's thermal scanners right now that are $12,000 that can scan 30 kids at a time. Do we have enough money to make that happen, or are we using the $50 scanners from Home Depot? And if the $50 scanners from Home Depot is a cost-effective way to still make sure that the students are taken care of with this COVID thing, then I'm all for it. But if there's an opportunity for us to get rid of something and bring in some brand new computers, or bring in a brand new $12,000 scanner that can help us scan 30 kids at a time, then that's what I'm looking to do, because that's what I see what's happening now. Currently in the school that I'm in, we're moving dollars around to make things work for teachers, dot cams, microphones, and we're getting rid of some of those old things that we had budgeted for that piece of it. So as a board member, that's my job. I will come in and I'll be very, very accountable, and I'll let you guys know exactly what's happening. But every time you think about James Monds, you'll know that he's making decisions for education and not for anyone else. He's making decisions for kids, not for anyone else. He's making decisions for students, not for anyone else. And he's going to make sure that the community understands that this school board loves you and we're going to take care of you. And our babies are most important in everything that we do.
Thanks, James. We'll start with you for the next question, which is, what are St. Lucie County Schools' greatest non-financial challenges? How would you propose to fix them?
One of our non-financial challenges that we do face is the ability to make sure that our students, who are what we call our struggling students, are educated at a very successful level. And the reason I speak to this is because a lot of kids that play football for me that are part of my nonprofit organization, a lot of these kids ended up attending our Dale Castens program here in the county, which to me is a wonderful program when you speak to it the right way. But what I have noticed is that our students haven't been getting what they need from that program, and I would love to come in and try to help make that a little bit better. That's just one of the things that we deal with. Another one that we deal with, of course, is teacher turnover. We deal with teacher turnover a lot. We have to work on our recruitment and retention area. I think that Mr. Gent, as well as Mr. Prince and his staff, are doing wonderful at trying to make this happen. But I'm a firm believer that we got to take care of home. So I think we have some great teachers here in our community who are aspiring to be teachers. We don't have to go out and spend money trying to fly to different locations, New York, Pennsylvania, to try to bring these teachers in, because these teachers are in your backyard and they're hungry and they're biting at the bit to be teachers in the community that they love. And that's what I believe in. I think that just comes with just saying, hey, you're a St. Lucie County resident. You've been through our system. You've graduated from our system. And this is how we're going to reward you, by giving you a job in this same system. And those are two things that it doesn't take a lot of money for that. It just takes us putting together a productive plan, put together a cohesive plan, and being able to actually move on those action points of that particular plan, and just let our teachers know that you are valued. And then sometimes a lot of the teachers here don't feel that way. So that's why they decide to go north or go south for a different job. And we're losing some of our best and brightest in our community to other communities who end up being more prosperous than us, because we've lost our great talents to those individuals. So those are a couple of things that I think that we can do. The last thing I'm going to speak on is just being visual in the community. Let the people in the community know that the school board cares about them. Let them know that we're here for you, because they were our babies at one time. they came through our system at one time. And when they get into 12th grade and they leave, they forget that we were ever here. So I'm a firm believer that we have to get back to making sure that the community understands that we are the entity that has raised you. We are the entity that's going to take care of you. But we also the entity that when you go out and do great things, we want to make sure that you understand that we reward you, and you reward us by doing those great things and showcasing what we are here in this community. So those are some things that we can do without a lot of money.
Thank you, James. Jack?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that one, because that's where that's my strength right there. You want to educate the entire child, not just the curriculum that's in the school. I mean, there's sports, there's music, there's so many other things to educate them about. And I know it's an old adage, and I've heard it a million times, but it takes a village, and that's what I'm about, with why I'm going to be on the school board. If you look at the questions that I answered for you, I don't know how many civic organizations that I've been with, and I'm still with, all through the community, 40 or 50 of them. I still do it, still raise all the money I can for the Boys and Girls Club, my Lions Club, whatever. These things, all the money from those, 90% of the money that we raise goes to the children. And there's a lot of programs that can be done after school. And we're in it bigger than we ever were much before. As I talked about the problem right now with the COVID, with a lot of the older kids having to stay with their younger kids, the Boys and Girls Club is addressing that, also helping with their essential workers. But there's so many other things beyond that. There's a lot of children that aren't getting the help that they need, that are special needs, and I won't go into it, but there's so much help that has to be done in so many ways. And the money has to come from somewhere to hire these, whether we need psychiatrists, more special ed help with mental problems and things like that. They all have to be taken care of. Same thing with the resource officers in the police force. A lot of them have to be retrained. Some of them don't. Some of them are already good. But I say this many, many times to many people. You can tell people all about the things that you know and everything you want to do, and then you can talk about the budget and how things should be moved, and things should not be moved if they from health, safety, and welfare. They should never be taken away. Health, safety, and welfare are number one if any board member. But all of these things that they talk about moving and all these things they want to do, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And you better show them that. You better, anytime you do anything, you better get into it with somebody and establish rapport before you try to sell them on giving you $400,000 from the CARES Act to do an alliance with the county for an after-school program. That's what I can do. I know all the elected officials in the county. I've been through them all. I've put my entire 30 years I've been here into the community, and the community's been wonderful to me. And that's why I'm trying to give back right here, especially at this time. This is unprecedented. It's a crisis. You don't need somebody that doesn't know what they're doing to try to formulate things. The entire child has to be educated in every way.
Thanks, Jack. I appreciate that. We'll start with you on the next question is, what are the pros and the cons of school choice options? Talking about charters, vouchers for private schools, homeschools, pros and cons for the parents and the children in St. Lucie County.
Well, I happen to have all the figures on that particular. I spoke to the CFO just recently about the figures for the school. There's just under 37,000 students right now. We went down about 800 enrolled in both programs in every way. Those schools, of course, are the 19 grammar schools we have, 6 high schools, K through 8s. They're all in there. The ones that aren't in there are that are not counted are the charter schools. There's over 400,000 children in the charter schools right now. We had 4, and we now have 6 charter schools. There's only 1 high school, and that's over at Somerset. There's pros and cons. So the first pro is for the charter schools is that they're public schools, and the law says that when they come along and they fill out all the requirements and do what they have to do to be a school, the school board has to approve them, which they do. They do that, and they've got to be monitored and everything like everyone else. And I think that they are pretty much. And so again, we only had 4. We have 6 now. 1 high school. Charter schools, yeah, the biggest problem with charter schools is they don't have to offer, all of them don't have to offer transportation. Some of them do. And that makes a little bit, that kind of hurts us with the diversity that are in these schools. Some of them have requirements that the parents can't fulfill. So they can't get in. So it changes the diversity in these schools in a way that schools should be open to everyone. And if your parent has to drive you every day, and that becomes a priority of whether they can go to that school or not, and it's right in their area or their district, that's a con. That's not good. They should be bused. You're paying your taxes, and you're paying for busing. You're paying for these public schools. Busing is part of it. It's a big part of it. I mean, it's huge in our budget for busing. But the not having the busing hurts the diversity in these schools. But right now, there's 4 of them. There's 6 of them. They seem to be doing well. And again, it's just the prep school that we have for the high school. But it's choice. It's a parent's choice, and I will live with that. And it's the law. And charter school comes along, meets all the requirements, I will vote for that charter school.
Thanks, Jack.
Gotta watch them.
Okay. James, what are the pros and cons of school choice options, charters, vouchers for private schools, homeschools for parents and children in St. Lucie County?
Okay, so let's go down the list of pros first. The pros for us, those particular schools, charter schools, private schools, is that it's a parent's choice, right? A parent doesn't have to be locked in to a kid going to a failing school because of that kid's zip code. A parent can say, hey, listen, I like this particular charter school because they are IB charter school, or I like this particular charter school because their focus is on chess and my kid aspires to be a chess guru. So it does give them the opportunity to go to those particular schools. One of the cons of a charter school is that, of course, it's in a situation where they're not neighborhood schools. And what we have seen is that when you don't have a neighborhood school, you have kids coming from different walks of life. And sometimes that creates, a little rift between those students. But we also seen that can also create a beautiful thing, is that because these kids aren't tied just to the area where they live in and just seeing the same things over and over and witnessing the same types of situations over and over in that particular community, they're able to go out and see to see how different kids coexist with one another. So that's a definite pro. It's almost like going to college. When you go to college, you don't know any of these individuals, but they come from different walks of life. And then out of nowhere, you have a best friend that may be from a different country. Another con to those a private school is that a private school really has no accountability when it comes to the school district. The school district really can't go in and see what's happening with those private schools. So we don't know if the education is equal to the education of a public school student. But a pro to a private school also is that you can have it to where a student may go to a private school for whatever it may be. That private school may be a school that's a school of football. I'm gonna use football for example because I was a football player. And you may have a kid that goes to this particular school and they have some of the best coaches you can find, and this kid ends up going to school, going to college, prospering in that particular sport, and then coming home and doing great things for their career. So there are some pros and cons to that. Another pro to a private school is also that sometimes there's a situation where the kid is at a public school and the mom says that they don't want to be there. They're not listening to me. So they decide to go to a private school. And the same thing from a private school back to a public school. But let's all keep in mind that public schools are the cornerstone of all education. And right now, with parents have choices, and choices creates competition. And competition either makes you rise to the occasion or it makes you debunk and fall away. And what we're seeing right now is that teachers are becoming better teachers because of things like this, and administrators are doing what they need to do to make sure that our students don't leave these public schools. So that's also a pro, that it makes us all become more competitive and makes us all more aware of what's happening with the education of our students.
Thanks, James. Just a quick question for you, sort of a follow-up, but you talked about neighborhood schools that might be failing. How would you go and what would be your strategy to go and fix those?
Oh man, one of the biggest things that's near and dear to my heart is making sure that all of our babies are educated in our community, because I know what it looks like when a student is not educated well and decides to walk away from education and end up giving their life to a negative part of our community, and then that creates a situation for everyone involved. So one thing that I would definitely do is have a roundtable conversation first with individuals that's involved in that school. So that would look like the stakeholders, which is the community itself, maybe some more elected officials in the community, the mayors or commissioners, as well as the administration of that particular school, and sit down and just do a needs assessment and say, hey, what is it that you need in order for your job to be easier? What is it that you need for us to help you make your job more effective and efficient? And what is it that we can do as a community to help these babies become the most influential individuals in our village? And one thing that we have seen with the program that I have is that we were able to go inside the schools and have conversations with these students, have conversations with their parents, have conversations with the administration. And then these same students that were at these particular schools will also come to our football program. So now we're able to have conversations with them still. And then we were able to create tutoring opportunities for these students. We're able to create mentoring opportunities for these students, and then watch these students go back to their school and do what it is they need to do to be successful. And that's kind of what the board member that I would be. I would be that community guy, that guy that would say, hey, listen, if your school is a school that's struggling, let's sit down, let's have a conversation about it. Let's make up some bullet points. Let's develop a policy and a plan, and let's act on this plan, and let's see 6 to 8 weeks what happens. If it's not working, let's go back to the drawing board and let's redo it all over again. But we're going to make sure we get these kids successful, because again, the worst thing that happened to me was seeing one of my kids lay dead in the street because of an argument between him and another student that was also from the same exact school. So those are the type of things that I can't deal with. It's hard for me to sleep at night. And I have 4 kids in this system, and 3 of them are boys. And I love my kids more than I love myself. So if I'm out here fighting for anybody, it's for everyone that's surrounded around anyone that I love. And my family in this community, before I was even thought about a twinkle in my dad's eye, the Monds family has been here. So I would love to have an opportunity to sit down with those struggling school administration and find out what I can do to make you guys better, find out what I can do to give you more pride, and find out what I can do to make you guys successful. So that way these babies can come back in our community and do what we need to do, and make sure that they're more prosperous than they ever would be. And I know that education does that for individuals, because it did for me. And that's why I'm here today.
Thanks, James. So Jack, how would you handle some of the issues in neighborhood schools that are below successful, that are failing?
Well, first of all, I just want to make clear one thing. Like, charter schools are public schools, and I don't think Mr. Monds made it any different way. They are public schools.
Yeah, I said that, Jeff.
Choice. I know, and like, just making it clear, that's all, because private school was mentioned a couple of times.
A private school is not a public school.
A private school is not a public school. Yes, sir. And I'm still wondering about vocational schools with that, James. But anyhow, getting back to what you would do with a school that you have, I've spoke at many graduations for both grammar schools and middle schools over the years. I was the main speaker for the DARE program, which to this day, I don't know why we ever stopped something like that for 5th graders. And I've been in these schools and talked to the teachers and about how the schools are run. It's not that hard for me, because there's an old New York saying, and for you people that have come from that area, the fish stinks from the head. And usually when there's a problem in a school like that, changing the upper command, the principal, vice principals, usually that'll cure it. But you don't do it. You just don't do it because the fish stinks from the head. You have to find out, are they getting all the necessary materials? Are they getting all the things they need? Do they have enough teachers? Do they have a good ESE program? But if enough people are complaining about that, like they have in some schools that I've been into, and I could tell that principal was not going to be there the next year, just why the way the interactions of the resource workers in the police department would tell me about how they get along with the principal, and about the DARE program, and how many the rooms that they had and the kids that were attending. Some did fantastic and some didn't. And I don't understand it, because the DARE program works so well everywhere. And to this day, it's got to be reinstituted. Things happened with the city, and I never got back to look into it, why it didn't come back. But yeah, it's usually the people at the top. You have to, from the top down, you got to make sure that that's the problem. You just don't go in and say, I'm going to fire Mr. Smith, hire Mrs. Jones, everything will be fine. It's a lot more than that. But usually, not all the time, that's what it is. You got to change the top. You got top echelon. And like I said, it takes a village. The rest of the city, the county, both cities have to be involved with the school. The children are our greatest asset. Health, safety, and welfare. But how do you fix a bad school? Fix it at the top.
Thanks, Jack. We'll start with you on the next question. Can you please give an example of an ethical dilemma you might have faced at some point in your life? How did you decide what to do?
Wow. I think one of the biggest ethical dilemmas I ever had was back years ago on the Crosstown Parkway when we were going to determine who was going to have, I got to say it properly because we wouldn't just give one contract to one person to do the entire thing. The actual paving and what was the one contract, and the people who were going to make the plan of where it went and submit all of our qualifications to the state to get and the federal government, by the way, which is a whole different story about how we federalized one section of that held it up for 5 years just to get the money. But the people who came in that 5 years earlier, I actually didn't have an election that year. Nobody ran against me. But earlier than that, they had given me money from my campaign. And it caused an unbelievable dilemma because they gave me the money from people that worked for them that I didn't even know worked for them. And it was wasn't a tremendous amount of money, but people knew about it and they supported me. I think it was the second time I ran, and it wasn't I won in a primary, but and then it came up to the council to vote on it. And it was a real bad dilemma because they were the right people for the job. They absolutely were. No one else knew the city better than they did, and it was quite a dilemma. Of course, we didn't have social media like we did now, but we had people write to the newspapers and things, and not just myself. One of the other council members had even a larger ethical dilemma than I did. It was the right thing to do to vote for that particular concern, and I voted for them. But boy, it went through my head. I lost a lot of night's sleep, and it was hard to do. But those things happen, and they constantly happen. It's not an easy job being in politics in any way, shape, or form. First of all, they call you a politician. There's good politicians and bad politicians, but I always did what I thought was good in my heart and in my head, mostly in my head. What's good for the county or the city, and who's going to do the best job? Crosstown Parkway came out beautiful. Took a long time to do, but it came out fine. That was the biggest ethical dilemma I've had others too, in the family mostly, but that was a tough dilemma, and it's hard to do. Make the right choice. Use your head.
Thanks, Jack. James, can you talk about maybe that one time? Give us an example of an ethical dilemma you might have faced at some point in your life. How did you decide what to do?
Yeah, so I'm juggling, trying to figure out which route I want to take. But I want you guys to, I'm going to give you guys an ethical dilemma that, and you're going to understand it. I want you to feel this. I'm born and raised in Fort Pierce, which to a lot of people is considered to be one of the most heinous areas to live in the north side inner city of Fort Pierce. And there was a situation when I was about 17 years old, I was getting ready to go to college. I just had a kid. My kid was about 1 year old at that time. And my father ended up getting into a little trouble. My father's the best man I've ever known in my life, even to this day. He was a person that's always pushed me to go towards education. But my father had a situation where he had a run-in with the St. Lucie County Police Department, in which it was broadcasted in the newspapers and things like that. Me and my father have the same name due to lineage. And then I started teaching at Fort Pierce Westwood High School as a PE teacher. And there was a school resource officer there who I met. And he was a great guy. You know, we ended up hitting it off. We started lifting weights together. We started working out together, things like that. And I get home and I tell my dad that I met this great guy, you know, and I think that, you know, this is a beginning of a really, really good relationship. And my father asked me for his name. And I gave my father the name of the young man, and this was the same guy that had arrested my father that particular night. And from that night until I got my job at Westwood, I thought about that a lot because I felt like my whole life was in shambles because of that. And then me and my father had a great conversation, and he said, "Hey man, you got to meet every man on the same level. He didn't do anything to you, so don't treat him like I am you." And I went back to school that following Monday, and I sat down and I had a conversation with that young man, and that young man knew who I was before I knew who he was. And he said, "Yeah, I do remember arresting your father." And then we just sat down, we had a great conversation. And from that point on, I understood that me understanding who I am and me looking at people for who they are allowed me to be prosperous in everything that I've ever decided to do. Even when I played for the 1997 Northside Baseball Bat Club, we had some great individuals there. But that particular day, this particular story is a story that has always resonated with me. So every time I meet someone, I meet them on the same level, regardless of what situation they've been in or what background they've come from. And just through that ethnical situation, and my father was able to talk me through that, and then I was able to become a man on my own and understand exactly what he meant. It's made me a better person today, and it's made me a better educator, it's made me a better teacher, it's made me a better father, husband, as well as a community member. So those situations like that, they actually changed the course of my life. And I want to say thank you to that young man. He knows I'm talking to him if he's watching this. And I want to say thank you to my father for showing me how to navigate that particular situation. But this is who I am, and this is the way that I react to things. So when you guys, elect me for this particular board, for the school board, you're going to get a guy that's ethical. You're going to get a guy that looks at things from an ethical standpoint, because I understand that everything that I do, everything that I say has recourse, not only to me, but also to my kids and the individuals that I love.
Thanks, James. I appreciate that. Any other board members have any questions? No? Okay. We're almost at our 45 minutes. We've got a couple minutes left. So we'll start with James. Is there anything else you would want us to know about? Anything we should be thinking about, or viewers?
Yeah, I just want anyone that's viewing this, I want you guys to understand, I'm the educator that's actually fighting for education. And honestly, I respect Mr. Kelly for his work for the city of Port St. Lucie, but he was never a county official. This will be his first time sitting on a county situation in which he'll have to look at education and try to make decisions. Again, I respect his work, but I respect my experience more. Me being in the classroom for 13 years, been in administration for the last 6.5 years, having an undergrad degree in criminology as a former officer, having a master's degree in educational leadership, and having a specialist degree in behavior sciences, have allowed me to do what I'm doing today. And that's to cultivate our youngest minds on a daily basis. This is not something that I'm just going to be doing for 2 days out of the month. This is something that I do Monday through Friday. And on Saturdays and Sundays, I'm a football coach, and I'm a baseball coach, and I'm a track coach, and I'm a mentor. So every day, everything that I do has been dealing with kids. So why not elect an individual who his whole existence has been taking care of children, to make decisions and to hold a board accountable for taking care of our kids? You would not elect anyone, or you wouldn't let anyone just come into the classroom and teach your babies without an educational degree. The state doesn't allow that. So why would you allow an individual to sit on a board to make decisions for the babies in the classroom, to make decisions for the teachers in the classroom? Again, I am a hometown candidate, born and raised in St. Lucie County, educated from the St. Lucie County School District. And I have come back and was a former teacher here in this district, in which I go on to do some great things. I'm still here. My kids are going to the public schools in this community. My mom is a teacher in this, is an educator in this community. My sisters are educators in this community. And my uncle, wonderful Monds, it was the one that started all of this for us. So with all those things, with all this experience, with all the things that I've done in my life, I'm the testimony that have shown you that our school system does work. But you guys continue to tell us that we haven't done enough. I think I've done just enough to sit on this board, to make decisions for education, and I'm your hometown candidate. So on November 3rd, make sure you cast your vote for James Monds, and you can go visit my website at mondsforstlucie.com to get more information about me. I appreciate your time, and you always know I always love you. Vote James Monds.
Thanks, James. Jack, any last words? Any
Yeah,
summary?
I have other words I wanted to end with, but I didn't want to go down this road. But Mr. Monds is absolutely wrong. I served up in Fort Pierce. I served on the Transportation Planning Organization for 12 years, which is a county board. I served on, moreover, even bigger than that, I served on the fire district board for 12 years in Fort Pierce. Served on the Sunrise Board in Fort Pierce. I actually built the counters at our first Boys and Girls Club. I did the carpentry work myself in Fort Pierce. I have great friends in Fort Pierce. I think the downtown area is just wonderful. I love to go there. But yeah, I know what's going on in the county board, and you all know that. I've been on a board of the Longwood Hospital at their meetings. I work with Mr. Van Duzer, the Van Duzer Foundation. I can go on and on. You have my civic organizations and all the things I have. There are 40 or 50 that I've done for the last 20, 25 years. I'm very involved in the entire county, especially when you're on the fire board and you have to go out on visitations and go into these elder homes and go up on the 95 at 4 o'clock in the morning and watch them cut somebody out of a burning car. And most of it was up in that area. Yeah, I'm very versed in everything that's going on in this county. And I know just about every elected official in the county. And the same thing with Martin County. I was for lack of other words, I was the ombudsman from this county to that county on their TPO. I changed the name of the Metropolitan Planning Organization to the Transportation. I did that organization. I did that. So I've been on many, many boards in the county. That is not a fact at all that I don't know what's going on in the county. And I want to leave you with this. Last night I watched, the difference that I would make on this board is I watched the meeting last night and they called the roll on everything and Mr. Gent made his recommendation and they just voted. Yes, 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 yes. 5-0. I had to call the CFO today to ask my questions that I would have asked at that meeting last night. And I'm not putting anybody down. Yes, they're not derogatory statements. It's just that for the public and for the transparency that Mr. Monds talks about, these questions should have been answered. Just like, what's the difference between $520 million and the 647, which is the total budget? What's that difference? What can I spend that other $120 million? Is the difference there? And the answer is no, you can't. That money isn't. It's indebted money that has to pay off things. Those kind of questions were not answered in other accounts that we had, and I don't have the time now to go into it. I would have asked those questions. I would have asked for an update from the health department. And the last time the board met and had the health department there, they asked some good questions. The answers were very surreptitious that we got. We don't know any benchmarks. When do we have to close the schools down? What's going on with the test? What's the positivity? Where's our benchmarks on what do we do? This COVID problem is a crisis. And like I say in my remarks, it could be a whole year. It could be my priority for the whole year on the board. Those questions were not asked last night, and that bothers me. I would have asked them all. It would have took a little bit longer for the meeting to go. And the questions, the answers that I got today were fine. I had no problem with the answers I got from Michelle, the CFO. She's a very learned woman, but those questions should have been asked for the public. That's the difference that I would make on a board. I did it on my board. Some people thought I asked too many questions sometimes. It's just what's in my head, Larry. That's the difference. And Mr. Monds, I'm sure you were a great teacher, sir.
I'm an administrator, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. We just completed the editorial board interviews for St. Lucie County School Board District 2. Tune into TCPalm for more information. But thank you to James Monds and Jack Kelly for joining us, and we'll catch you guys later on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, James.
See you, Jack.